What's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, and welcome to my first trimester recap, first signs and symptoms, all of that good stuff. Now, this video is effectively going back in time because I am now sat here 20 weeks pregnant, so in my second trimester, but hopefully this video is going to give a bit of context as to why I have waited a little bit of time to make this video. I honestly have just not felt that great and I just needed a bit of time to get my head back into filming and all of that stuff. I watched so many of these videos in the first trimester and in that horrible kind of 2-week wait period. So I really wanted to make my own video and put it out there just as a thank you for all of the others that I watched. And I know it can be so helpful when you're sat there in the first trimester, which does feel very lonely and isolating at times. Okay, let's dive straight in with the 2-week wait window. Now, I wanted to include this because firstly, there are lots of videos on it and I did find those very interesting when I was looking through and just desperately trying to, of course, you're trying to figure out if you are pregnant before you can test you're pregnant. And it is such a weird and long 2 weeks to wait between obviously when you have ovulated and then when your period would be due. But yeah, I documented kind of day by day what was going on and I wanted to include it in this video because it is technically the start of your first trimester. You just don't know that it is because you don't know you're quite pregnant yet. So the first thing to say, if you watch my last video, which was my finding out I'm pregnant video, you will see there is a clip right at the beginning where I say, this was like 5 or 6 days before my missed period, I was absolutely convinced that I was pregnant. I honestly felt it in every part of my body and that was my strongest symptom, even though that's not a symptom, that's just a feeling. Honestly, my gut instinct, I would say, was my strongest kind of pull to feeling like I just felt like I was pregnant. I just honestly did. Then I had some symptoms, which again, I just popped all of these down. I didn't know by this point whether I was pregnant or not. I was just documenting them in case I was, and I wanted to then look back and see actually what it looked like day by day. I should also say that a lot of these symptoms are similar to premenstrual symptoms that I might have, and I kind of caveat that as I go. So the first kind of symptom that I was having, firstly, DPO is days post-ovulation. I had to learn that lingo as well. 6 days post-ovulation, so 6 DPO, I had very mild cramping. I was having such weird, vivid dreams, the craziest dreams, and I would say I'm not really a dreamer. Like I rarely wake up and think that was a weird dream, or I rarely have nightmares, or I rarely remember my dreams in the morning. I had so many weird dreams and so many vivid dreams about people I love and that I could picture so clearly what was happening in them. Very sore, swollen boobs and boobs feeling really hot. Now, I would say that's not a common premenstrual symptom for me. I very rarely ever have symptoms in that area. So I was a little bit like, maybe something is going on here, but could be nothing. 7 DPO, I said I felt like I had a cold first thing in the morning. I just felt like I was stuffy in my nose. I felt congested and clogged up and just, yeah, felt like I had a cold. I also kept having a pinch on my right side, like down near where I imagine like my ovaries are, like down on like that right area. I kept feeling like a pinching sensation. And I also still had mild period cramps. I would say the mild cramping for me is normal. That was a normal PMS symptom that I would normally get anyway. But the pinching was a little bit weird. I'd not felt that before. 8 to 9 DPO, we were actually away for a couple of nights and I still kept feeling this strong pain or this strong pinching in that kind of right side area. Plus I was so bloated and crampy. Again, bloating and crampy isn't an abnormal PMS symptom for me, so I wasn't massively convinced on those ones, but I documented them anyway because they were still symptoms. 10 DPO was the day that we got home, the day you will have seen the clips from the last video. That was honestly when I did the pregnancy test first thing in the morning when we got back home, and it was positive. So my positive test came on 10 DPO and I was obviously absolutely over the moon. You can see that reaction in video, like I said in my last video. But that kind of started me off. So that was then the first point when I then actually knew I was pregnant, and was moving into what I would then call, yeah, like the full first trimester and all of those weeks to come. So moving into the first trimester as a whole, this starts from week 4. Week 4 started with sore boobs, more tired, bloated, and I put nothing major to report. And in honesty, I didn't really feel much. I think I was more thinking that I was feeling things, because by this point I knew I was pregnant, and you start to think, oh, maybe this is something, maybe this is something. And I remember thinking, like, maybe I'm just gonna be one of those people who doesn't have any symptoms and I just have such a breezy, chilled first trimester. Was I wrong, or was I wrong? Honestly, I wish I could go back to that girl in week 4 and just be like, hun, enjoy yourself now, because it's gonna be a bumpy couple of weeks. End of week 5 is when my morning sickness started. Now, what I should say is that morning sickness as a term obviously counts both nausea and sickness. So I'm going to talk about both elements, but in this element, I'm meaning nausea. So I wasn't vomiting in week 5, but the all day constant nausea, that is when it started, towards the end of week 5, going into the beginning of week 6. I also put that I was craving anything salty and crunchy. I'm not as kind of savory snacker or a savory person. I'm a sweet gal through and through. And honestly, my sweet tooth totally and utterly disappeared. And I would say my kind of food aversions and my food cravings changed like that. Like, honestly, it was like a light switch. Like, my body just went into this total mode where all it wanted was things that was plain and salty. And I think that was coupled with the nausea obviously starting. And when you are feeling nauseous, you don't fancy certain things. But I would say that was one of the maddest first symptoms, those two, the nausea, and just how much things that I would normally eat, like potatoes. Potatoes are like the most unoffensive thing, I think, to eat. They don't really smell of anything. They're plain. I could not eat potatoes. I could not eat potatoes. Honestly, anything like that, just the smell and the thought of them would honestly make me retch, and I would have to just leave the room. So that's when it really started for me. Mints and fizzy water, I wrote, were helping with nausea, and the mints didn't last as helping, but the fizzy water is something which did stay as helping throughout. Struggling to work out, snoozing on sofa, nausea, definitely feeling quite tough, have to eat immediately when waking. So yeah, this is when the kind of new morning routine started for me, which was having toast made and brought up to me, because I physically could not leave the bed, could not get up and stand up properly without eating food, because the nausea was so intense. So Will would go down and he would make toast for me, bring it up, and I'd have it either with a glass of ridiculously cold water, like the coldest water he could make for me, or orange juice. Those were the only things that I could have in the morning, just plain toast, and I had to really fight my way through it. But as soon as I had something in my tummy, the nausea didn't go, but it just meant I was then able to kind of get up and function. If you've watched any of my old videos, you will know how totally and polar opposite that is to my normal morning routine. Getting up, walking the dog, having a nice breakfast, a nice balanced, healthy, high protein breakfast, meditating, stretching, journaling, it was all out the window. Honestly, I went into total survival mode, and all I was focused on was getting through each and every day. And the weeks from this point onwards, in honesty, just kept getting harder. So let's continue. Week 6, napping every day. I know people talk a lot about the tiredness, and I did have a lot of tiredness, but I would say that was a symptom that bugged me the least. The symptoms which bugged me the most were things like the nausea, the vomiting, and the food aversions. The tiredness and the napping, I could kind of cope with. I don't know whether it's just that for me, it didn't feel as tough compared to these other symptoms and elements that were happening. But yeah, napping every day. Morning sickness is constant. Hunger is real. Only craving savory, plain, salty foods. And I think that was the constant battle. I was hungry, but there was nothing in the entire world that I wanted to eat. Someone could have literally said, I'll get you anything in the whole world, what could you eat? And I honestly could not think of anything. And I feel so sorry for Will and my mum, who would literally get anything that I wanted. And I just could not eat. I just could not eat stuff. I could only eat plain toast, plain crisps. It even couldn't eat salty crisps by this point. It was literally just like plain ready salted crisps without vinegar. Nuts definitely started this week. Nuts are obviously very salty and very dry and plain, and I just constantly felt unsatiated, I guess, by what I was eating. I don't know again whether some of that is just from my normal diet and how much I love food and I love cooking and I love fueling my body, to then suddenly go from that to literally just eating plain toast and nuts just didn't feel like a substantial enough food for me to feel like satisfied and fueled and energized. So that was really tough, both psychologically and physically. The other thing that I started in that week, or I think it was in another video I watched, somebody said, have you tried sour sweets to help you kind of distract from wanting to throw up and kind of distract you from that taste? That taste that I had in my mouth, I know a lot of people describe it as metallic. Mine wasn't metallic, it was just gross, is the only way I can describe it. And it got worse as the day went on. So as the day went on, I would just get this stronger and stronger taste in my mouth, and it would just make me feel sicker and sicker and sicker. And it was just like a dirty taste. It wasn't metallic. And sour sweets, or like a sweet that was like a strong flavor, I definitely found helped. Again, I don't really like sweets. I wouldn't really have something like that normally, but at this point, anything that helped was worth it. I also really wanted to say that by this point we had actually told our very, very, very close family, because in honesty, I felt too sick not to. Like, I was nauseous all day, every day. I couldn't do basic tasks like going to get the food shop or cooking any food or anything like that. So I definitely needed that support. And I think the loneliness and that kind of scary isolation is one of the hardest parts of that first trimester. Nobody knows that you're pregnant, but you can be going through such incredible and intense feelings and physical and emotional changes, but you're supposed to be keeping it a secret. It's very, very strange. And I think I never really appreciated that until I went through it myself, and until I then recognized, actually, this is really, really odd. Everyone is different. I think I absolutely respect at any point when people choose to tell friends, family, the whole wide world. But for me, I'm so glad that I told my mum, our closest family. But I'm so glad that they did know, because that support and that just help with those day-to-day tasks was so vital for me at that point, because I just felt, to be honest with you, just so sick and just so rubbish. So yeah, that's week 6. Another thing I also just want to add that I wrote on week 6 was feeling overwhelmed. This is only halfway through the first trimester, but reminding myself my body knows what to do. It won't last forever. I got so trapped in this mindset of looking and obsessed with looking. Okay, most people say it stops at week 11. Most people say if it's only nausea, which at this point it was only nausea, it stopped at week 11. Most people say it's completely gone by week 12. So I was literally counting down day by day, week by week, and that is not a healthy headspace to be in, because everybody and every pregnancy is different, but also it was totally and utterly not the case. And I think that led me to more kind of disappointment, not disappointment, but more like frustration that I wasn't feeling better by these set weeks that everybody else seemed to be feeling better by. The other thing I should say is that I wasn't doing any workouts by this point. So I think the last week I did workouts was, I think I did 1 or 2 in week 5, and from then onwards I was not working out. I did manage to walk every day with Tobes, but it was only for literally like 20 or 30 minutes once a day. For me, I actually sat and looked through what was my kind of minimum, what was my daily minimum, and for me that was getting changed into fresh PJs, literally just getting changed from what I'd slept in, and getting some fresh air with Toby, even if it was literally 5 seconds down the road. But for me, that made such a big psychological difference that it really, really helped. So I kept going with that and I just took things really slowly. I definitely found that once I got out and I started walking and I started moving, I definitely did start to feel a little bit better. Again, I used things like sweets when I was sucking, a mint or a sour sweet, and I was using that to kind of distract me and to keep kind of like my mouth occupied. But slow, gentle walking, close to home in small circles, just with Tobes, I definitely found was helpful. Moving into week 7. So this is when things got even harder, to be honest with you. And week 7 to 12 looked very, very similar. I was napping 1 to 2 hours every day. The morning sickness was constant. The nausea was constant throughout the day. Literally from the second my eyes opened in the morning to the second they closed at night, even if I got up in the night to use the toilet, I felt sick. In those split seconds that I was walking to the toilet and back, I felt sick. The nausea was the most overwhelming, constant feeling I've ever experienced. And unfortunately, this week was when the vomiting also started as well. So I started vomiting at the beginning of week 7 and it happened like clockwork at about 10:30 at night. It was always the same time at night. And for me, it kind of just felt like my body had got to the point throughout the day where it had been so nauseous that it just reached the point where I was like, I'm just gonna have to be sick now. So every evening around 10 or 10:30, I was sick. And that stayed every single day from week 7 to week 12. So I had 4 full weeks of every single day, but it was only ever once a day. Now I know that having since opened up on my Instagram about my pregnancy and talking with you guys about your own experiences, a lot of you have said, you know, you went to your GP or your midwife, your doctor, etc., and you were able to have some medication and all of that stuff. And I really don't want you to think that I didn't have medication because I think there's something wrong with it. Of course, if you need it and you're advised to have it and it helps, absolutely follow the advice that you're given. The reason why I didn't have any was honestly because I didn't think that I qualified. And it was only then when I was then talking to people afterwards that they were like, you totally should have just gone to a doctor and talked to them about this and they would have been able to help in some way, shape or form. So I just kind of cracked on. And then by the point that I then realized I probably could have had some help, it was not too late, but I just felt like I'd got through so much of it already. It just felt like I was kind of starting to come out the other side of it, and I was optimistic that I was on the path to things feeling a little bit better. So I just wanted to say that in case people were like, why didn't you go to the doctors or why didn't you get medication, in case people thought that there was a particular reason for that. But that was honestly, I just didn't think that I was sick enough to need it, but retrospectively, I think that's actually not true. What else did I write? I also wrote, finding it hard to get back to sleep in the night from nausea. Yeah, that was probably one of the low points during those weeks, was just feeling so tired, but just feeling too sick to sleep and just laying there thinking, all I can think about is feeling sick. All I can think about is feeling sick and not being able to go to sleep. Brain just feels like it's not working and everything just feels hard. This is also definitely the weeks when I really started to struggle mentally with all of the changes and everything that was happening. I've spoken a little bit on my Instagram about some therapy and some mind coaching that I'd been having before pregnancy to help with my kind of earlier anxiety struggles that I'd been through quite a few years ago, which are kind of resurfaced over the last couple of years. But having Natalie's support, who guided me through kind of the mental changes I was experiencing and helping me feel safe and grounded with all of this change happening, was so incredibly valuable. I will link her details down below because she is honestly amazing and I would recommend her to everybody. She totally understood my kind of context and my battles with anxiety, and to then be thrown into a situation where there is so much unknown and there is so much overwhelm, you're still hiding everything. You still feel like, is this gonna stick? I've heard all these horror stories. Is stuff gonna go wrong? Is this, is that? What if? Which is literally how an anxious brain, or my anxious brain, works on a constant basis anyway. So I just feel like it escalated that tenfold, and she was excellent at just helping ground me and give me some good coaching and therapy, which really, really helped. So the other thing to say is that at the 8-week mark, we did actually decide to get a private scan. Now, what I want to say is that right at the beginning of pregnancy, I very much was of the mindset that I'm not going to get a private scan. I'm going to wait for my 12-week NHS scan, which is like your standard NHS one that you have at 12 weeks. And I'm just going to listen to my body, go with the flow, etc. But to be honest with you, I felt so sick and so unwell that I really needed something to prove that there was something going on in there, and to ground me and to just remind me that there was a purpose to this. I wasn't just sick with this horrible bug. There was an incredible thing happening inside of my body. And I know that sounds weird that you need to see that because you know that, but when you are feeling in that state, and when I was in those weeks, I just needed something really tactile to grip onto. So we booked to go for a private scan at the beginning of 8 weeks. And to be honest with you, it was the best decision ever, because it was so calm, so incredible, and it just really helped me see this little tiny, she literally looked like a kidney bean at this point. To be able to see it and to be able to have that printout of the scan picture, and I had it on my phone every time I was up at 10:30 by the toilet being sick, or in the middle of the night just feeling so nauseous, I just looked at that picture. And honestly, it just grounded me so much. The other thing it really helped with was some of my anxiety issues, because just my general anxieties around pregnancy and around things potentially going wrong. I know obviously early scans aren't a sure thing, but the doctor that we went to, she advised us that because we were just over the 8-week mark, and because everything looked how it did, our chance of miscarriage actually dropped to around 2%. So that made me feel also much more relaxed and much more like my body's doing its thing. I'm gonna go with the flow, and I'm just gonna let it do its thing and just do my best to kind of roll with this. And I think that's when I had the biggest mindset shift, was in those weeks. I'm not lying that I think that between weeks 8 and 12, it was still incredibly tough physically. But I think mentally I was in a much stronger headspace, and it really did help me. Obviously, I know everybody has access to those things, and every country is different in what you get at different weeks. But I just wanted to give like the full context to that turning point, because it was really helpful. The other things I was still experiencing between these weeks were bloating. I was still obviously tired, like I said, but the main things that were bothering me was the all-day nausea, the vomiting every evening, and also the food aversions. Those were, I think, my strongest hallmark pregnancy symptoms that I had. In terms of the food aversions, I feel like I've talked a lot about the nausea, but not as much about the food aversions. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason to it, and I know that everybody says similar things, but there really wasn't a pattern to it. It was certain things just tipped me over the edge. I actually found the one thing that really did help was to completely remove myself from the kitchen. So in the evenings, which was kind of my sickest feeling time of the day, I totally and utterly removed myself from the kitchen. So I wouldn't go in there. I would stay in the lounge, I would stay upstairs in the bedroom, and I would have all the doors closed. It sounds really dramatic, but it really helped me. And even when I was leaving the lounge downstairs to come up to the bedroom, I would literally hold my nose, or I'd have like my sleeve over my face, because the second I got a whiff of something happening in the kitchen, or just the smell of the oven on and warm, it would make me want to vomit, or it would make me physically vomit. So just that was really helpful. It didn't make the nausea go away like that, but it helped make it the tiniest bit more manageable. And I just found I had safe spaces throughout the house, which I could kind of come to. And I felt really grateful that I had that, because it did definitely help not having to be in that place where there was like warm foods cooking and smelling. Okay, so that pretty much leads us to the end of like week 12. The last time I was physically sick was around the beginning of week 13, I think. And from that point onwards, touch wood, I haven't actually been sick, physically sick again. The nausea has stayed, but it's isolated itself to just the evening. So from about week 16, I would say between 16 and 18, it gradually dialed down in the day and it just stayed in the evening. And I would say now at week 20, I would say it's still not really present in the daytime at all, but in the evenings from like 4 or 5 o'clock, I still get that little switch on of a light switch where it starts, but it's just much lower and much more manageable. And yeah, I'm not feeling like I'm physically going to be sick. Some of the food aversions are definitely still there, but I will save that for a second trimester recap because this video, I'm sure, has been super, super long. Thank you so much if you've listened to it all, and thank you so much if you've supported me on my Instagram with lovely comments and messages and all of that stuff. I promise YouTube is back, and I'm sorry that I've been so slow, but I hope this video has helped give some context to what I've been doing, what's been going on, and yeah, how much that kind of just consumed me over those weeks, and how much I've just gradually got better. I know some people get instantly better or it's just like a light switch. Mine hasn't been like that. Mine has been, I've gradually got a little bit better. I only started working out again at around the 16-week mark, so I've only been back into workouts for the last couple of weeks. And yeah, I'm just taking things easy because I feel like mine has been a very gradual process to feeling a little bit more human. The other thing I really just wanted to end this saying is just to say that this video has absolutely not been me complaining about any of this. I'm so incredibly grateful for this lovely baby and this incredible pregnancy, and that I'm able to experience this. But that doesn't take away from some of the difficult elements, and I really wanted to share that because I wanted to be honest with you guys that as much as it is the most magical thing in the entire world, it is also incredibly tough at times. Obviously everyone has different experiences, but yeah, I just wanted to be real and honest with you guys. So I will leave this video here and I'll hopefully see you next week for another video. Bye guys.